for myself, this is a very interesting panel for me because actually 2 out of these 4 brands are clients of ours. So TCL Multimedia and OFO both actually work with Wear Social China to build their global digital presence. And so I think for you guys, there are a couple of reasons why this could be interesting for you. One is if you are managing a brand, then, well, you have to be aware that these Chinese competitors are coming online and you know, this is a peek into their strategies. If you are a third party or an agency trying to help brands, then this is a new set of client base that could be coming our way as well. So anyway, without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Isabelle, and she's going to tell us about her role on ICICLE.
Hello, everybody. My name is Isabelle CAPRON. I am VP at ICICLE. ICICLE is a Shanghai-based high-end fashion brand, which is doing very well. It exists since 1997. And I'm in charge of global marketing and also heading our design center, which is based in Paris since 2012, where we have 30 people who develop all kinds of piece of design, creation, architecture, etc., which is applied in China. This is why I'm on this panel.
Hi everyone, my name is Matthieu Faure. I joined OFO 3 months ago as head of marketing for France. Prior to joining OFO, I was already in the startups and the mobility world, American startup at Uber and French startup at Bubbles. OFO is the dockless bike-sharing leader in the world. We are present in 21 countries in the world, 250 cities. We have 10 million connected bags. And we do 32 million trips every day. So it's a big company in the mobility world. And we started almost 4 years ago in Beijing with a few Chinese students creating the company.
Hello, I'm Frédéric LANGIN. I'm in charge of sales and marketing in TCL Europe. TCL is one of the biggest technology high-tech products in the world, number 3 for TV. So I am representing the TCL Multimedia part of the group. And actually, we've been expanding outside China for a long time. You may remember that TCL Multimedia bought Thomson Multimedia a long time ago in France, for example. So now we are really expanding overseas. And it's starting to be very interesting on a very competitive market like TV. And outside TV, we have other products like smartphone, white goods, air conditioning. So it's a very big group, and at the moment we are number 3 for TV.
Hello, I'm Penny. I come from China, from Shanghai. I work for a Shanghai-based company, which is Shanghai JAHWA United Company, which is a listed company in Shanghai Stock Exchange, which is also one of the leading cosmetic and personal care group in China. I work for the European business. I'm in charge of the European business, and we represent now mainly a cosmetic brand which is called Herboriste in French, if you know. I think some of you received our products the day before yesterday. I hope you like them. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to start with the questions, and then we're just going to go around for each panelist to provide their responses. So the first one is very relevant to why we're here today, which is since we are at China Connect, can you talk about the importance of the French market in your global strategy?
Well, as I'm French, I'll be proud to talk about the French importance of France, in fact. but I'm talking about fashion, so I think it's quite obvious. Although ICICLE has been very pioneer in its way of approaching France. It was the first fashion brand who really decided to settle a design center in Paris in 2012. So it's been more than 5 years now that we've been working on what, and you can see it in the logo of the brand, I would say the fact that we are blending East and West. And I think this is very unique, a very unique workway, which is to say, of course, the big market is in China. We have a fast-growing market, 25% per year since many years, and next year's projection is more than 25%. But we need to improve our level to go international. So how will we improve our level? By going to Paris. Why Paris? Because Paris is the capital of fashion, because Paris is the capital of couture know-how, because it is in Paris where we can find talents to not only for fashion, but also to build a brand, to create value on the brand, to bring it to an international level. So this is why we developed this design center. We are 30 people in many areas, like fashion. We have a fashion studio, we have a fashion workshop with people coming from the big fashion houses. We also have a marketing department with visual merchandising, with not yet social media, so maybe we'll be your clients later, but we have image building, advertising, graphic design, etc. We redid the logo, by the way, and you can see that the logo is a dialogue between East and West. I think it's very important in the positioning of the brand. And we have now a retail architecture department who is working on the new retail concept in China. France is important for the talents, for the know-how in the fields I mentioned, but also because it's a very good place to invest. It's a solid investment. If you buy buildings, if you invest in a future retail shop, it's a good place to invest. It's very central in Europe also, if you plan to develop later in Europe with logistics center, productions, etc. It's very central. And also France is a very good image booster even for China. I mean that if you want to get better locations in better malls, it's good to have to be present in France.
Okay, thank you. And for Ofo?
Yeah, France is very important for us. Even if we don't have the same biking culture as in Netherlands or in Denmark in Europe, France is very important for 3 reasons. The first one is that France and President Macron are leading a lot of green initiatives, One Planet Summit, etc., but also a lot of initiatives around mobility, car sharing, bike sharing, etc. In terms of bike sharing, France started a lot of system with docking system a few years ago with the Vélib, the Vélove. Every city in France has its own system, so bike sharing is already there. And the third point is maybe that every city in France want to increase the modal share of sharing, of biking, sorry. So they want to decrease the share of car. So sorry for Maserati and for Jacob, but and they want to increase the share of biking. For instance, in Paris, Paris City and Anne Hidalgo is really involved in that. They want to move from 5% modal share for biking to 15% by the end of 2030.
Okay. So just one specific thing about Ofo, which is, do you feel like perhaps the brand had used China itself as a testing ground before launching into international markets?
As a testing, you mean?
Yeah. So because they launched in China first.
Yeah.
And the bikes are all over the place. If you guys been to China, so I think we actually have too many bikes, right? So have they taken that as a learning and then try to optimize it for the international markets.
Yeah, exactly. The experience in China and in Asia was very important for us, and we don't want to repeat the same approach in China than in Europe and in France in particular. We want to have a different approach based on these learnings. The competition is very different in China than in France. In French, we have smaller competitors. We don't have the same number of competitors, but we want to have a different approach, which is more proactive discussion with city stakeholders before launching to a city. We want to be more open to other actors of the ecosystem, and we want also to be more cautious, to have a more progressive step-by-step approach, so not putting 1,000 of bags in the city, but launching a few. For instance, in Paris, we launched 3 months ago with 1,000 bags only, just to experiment, to test, and then we will see how to improve that in the future.
Okay.
So it's more progressive and more step-by-step.
Okay, thanks. All right, let's go to TCL.
So for TCL, as I mentioned in the introduction, I mean, France is like our home market in Europe because of the relationship we have had with Thomson, and we operate still here in Europe under Thomson and TCL brand. So it's our market is where we have the best performance in Europe. We also have the lab for R&D in Angers, in France. So there's a good level of people as well. And actually, we have used France for a long time as a flagship market. And we've learned a lot over the last 12, 13 years about France, about the French consumers, but also about the French retail. As you know, French retail is very powerful and very diverse, from the hypermarket to the specialist to the web. So it's also a good way for us to start. So it's a real flagship, and not because I'm French, because I joined only 18 months ago, so it was before my time. But I think we really enjoy here having a big team of people. So TCL HQ for Europe is here in Paris, in ICICLE, close to Paris, and we are close to 100 people. And actually now we are expanding to local countries, and probably it will come later in the discussion. But yes, France is very, very important for us.
Okay, thanks. And herborist?
For herborist, I think France is very important. When we decided to come to France 10 years ago, I think it was, I was not there. I was not here at that moment. I think it was a strategic decision. And today I still believe this is a very correct decision, because France is one of the most complex markets in the world in terms of cosmetic, skincare. It's very challenging. And the fact that we choose the most difficult market in the world proves that we are confident about us, we are confident about our products, and we know that it can help us to do better. It's very complex in the consumer behavior, in the consumer psychology, also in the regulatory part. You know, with all the what we hear about from the media about the made in China, we still can survive until today. It's very difficult. But we are very strict to ourselves in terms of products, regulatory, quality, or the value chain of the products. So for this part, France is, we choose to have this challenge until today, and we will continue. And for the domestic market, France is also very important. This is what all the speakers speak about, the image that our success in France can be used to China in terms of communication. It's very important. We have more than 1,500 point of sales in China, and in all the point of sales, they have photos about our flagship in Paris, in Opera, and they talk about the presence in France, in Europe, and so for the consumer, it's something unique, because we are still the unique skincare brand made in China, in France, in Europe. So it's very important for us, France.
So is it a way to sort of become more international as a brand and less Chinese?
Yes, France is obviously one of the most important bridge for us to get international. We have the ambition to be international, not only in Europe. But today we are still only in Europe. But we want to make more success in France, in Europe. Then it will be a very good bridge for us to get more internationally recognized.
Okay, great, thanks.
If I may add something, sorry, forgot to mention something, of course. Thank you. Very obvious is that France is also one of the biggest markets in Europe and also in the world for TV. So it's also one of the reasons we're here.
Okay.
Just I forgot to mention this. France is a big country also for TV.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Thanks. All right. So moving on to my next question. So what are some of the key perceptions of being a Chinese brand that you have to be aware of as you grow your brand globally?
Well, in the field of fashion, of course, we have to struggle against stereotypes and debunk them, really. You know, even if in a very mature country, and I would say cultured country like France, I'm surprised to see that the stereotypes are still very, very much there, which is, you know, it's cheap product, it's tasteless. I'm a bit brutal, but it's about pollution, it's about, you know. So even though it's changing so fast, and I think that it's changing also the mentality, but the mentality are deeply rooted, you know, especially when you talk about fashion. So in fact, it's interesting because it's very challenging, because the challenge for us is to reveal that there is a new made in China. So this is my topic, is to say that to reveal to French people, to European people, that there is a totally new made in China, which is capable of exactly the opposite of what you think, which means high quality, very high quality products, creativity, even eco-consciousness, which is the case of the brand, our brand, ICICLE, which is born eco-conscious in 1997, because they were, you know, they are born late, so they integrated since the beginning the issues of pollution, because also the country was in such a state. So they are eco-born, so I would say they are in advance on this matter. So it's to reveal that it's also a culture of fashion, which is very much the case of this brand, because this brand, you know, has a very international fashion, which appeals to urban of all over the world, with with minimal design, with high quality fabrics, but also with an idea of bringing back a traditional, all the ancient traditions of China about, you know, their millennial know-how about, you know, their noble fabrics, silk, their shapes, you know, their white shapes, the way, I mean, there's a huge culture in terms of fashion, and they are making this culture. They want this culture to be able to, with this culture, invent a new fashion for the 21st century. Okay. So all this is very new, and our task is to reveal it. Okay. And I think cool. It might interest some new targets.
Right. Just an extension of that for you. Are other Chinese fashion brands doing the same thing as you guys, trying to reinvent the perception of Chinese brands?
Yes, I think there are lots. In fact, nobody is aware yet in Europe that there are. But you are Chinese, you know, it's like everywhere. And funnily, there are a lot of new generation Chinese entrepreneurs. You know, a lot of couples who you know, started their business in the 90s, and who are really developing this kind of businesses with a true ethical thinking. So it's very impressive, you know, because I think in the fashion, they, I mean, eco-wise, they are in advance compared to a Western country.
Okay, wow, thanks.
And they will, I'm sure they will, you know, with time, because Chinese are very fast, but they know about long time. Right. They will, a new generation of Chinese brands will go international very successfully.
Okay, thanks. And Ofo?
Yeah, I fully agree with Isabelle. I think there's a new made in China. And I think the perception is moving from strong products to strong brand based on user experience and a strong service. And this is exactly what we want to build at Ofo, is a very strong brand based on a very strong user experience. and with technology, of course, but with hardware and software mixed. Not only hardware products, so it's a mix of hardware, technology, of software, but also a service you can use every day. So we think that at OFO, with this kind of connected objects, we can improve this perception of not only strong products, but strong brand and strong service.
Okay.
And sometimes, as we are quite disruptive, it can lead a lot of fear and maybe some misperception.
Right.
That's why we need to discuss a lot. We need to be proactively open to discussion with city stakeholders, with the ecosystem, etc. And I think it's very important to tell our story for the brand, I mean, and to explain who we are, what we do. And not only to explain the product benefits or features, etc.
Okay. So with something like OFO, it's inevitable that there will be some haters of what you guys do. So do you think how they express themselves, how they express their dislike towards the product is amplified because of the Chinese brand?
Maybe a bit, but before I was at Uber, which is not a Chinese brand, which is American brand, and it was quite the same. So I think when a brand is disruptive, you have a lot of haters. That's why you need not only, and lovers as well. Yeah, you're right. So people are not in the middle. People are either they hate you or they love you. So you need to focus, of course, on the people who love you, but it's important to tell your story and to explain who we are, what you do, and to build the best product you can, so that people, the everyday user, they will love your product, and if they love the product, they will love the brand.
Okay, cool, thanks. TCL?
So I have to say that in my area, I'm very lucky because there's less stereotypes about China or made in China or made by China, because now people know, especially in the young generations, that Chinese companies are excellent in technology. So when you sell high-tech products, I mean, it's not that difficult to pass it to the consumers.
Right.
So now I think the Chinese companies and TCL especially have proved that they can really compete with any other brand in terms of technology when it comes to TV, smartphone, white goods. Also, perception, I think, is that we are, as a Chinese company, we are excellent in manufacturing capabilities because of a very good vertical integration, supply chain, also costing, of course. It's cheaper to produce, but it doesn't mean we do cheap products. We do cheaper products. It's very, very different than cheap products.
Yeah.
Actually, we are also very eco-responsible, as you mentioned, because, for example, talking about supply chain, we are now using the Silk Belt road. You know, the new Silk Road. Actually means that our component comes now not more by ship, but by train via China directly in 2 weeks.
Wow.
So it means we save a lot of time. Of course, the carbon footprint is lower, and we also are better in terms of supply.
Okay.
I think that in terms of perception, what we need to work on, and I'll come to that later, is how we pass the brand to the end user, to the consumers, because you know. There's a very strong identity, but probably outside China, we have not passed it to the consumers yet. So that's what we're working on now. In terms of the perception, I think, especially with the people who are really our target consumers, people do appreciate now that the Chinese products are very good in terms of performance and in good terms of value for money.
Okay. To your point about it being cheaper but not a cheap product, do you think your competitors in the consumers' minds are the other Chinese brands like Skyworth, or are they also considering, the Korean brands or the Japanese brands?
I think the competition is, the TV has really moved fast the last couple of years. So there were the American and the Japanese, the Koreans, and we all hope. Well, actually, I hope that. The time will come for the Chinese.
Right.
But my competition as TCL is, of course, the Korean, but also the other Chinese brand, as you mentioned.
Okay.
So,
right.
Because they are also good.
Okay, thanks. For Herborist?
I think for skincare product, So made in China, of course, there's a new image of made in China, which is very good for herborist. But still, as the only skincare brand in France and in Europe, we not only have to be good in all the aspects versus the competitors with the other brands, but we have to, so these are something for in terms of formula, texture, efficiency, etc., packaging, we have to be very good, if not better compared to other brands. But we have to talk, we talk a lot about our culture. So because customers will ask, we have so many offers of skincare, why choose your products? So we talk about the difference of herborist versus other products, which is the culture. So the strong herborist, which is different from brands, we talk about the culture, the traditional Chinese medicine. So in this quite niche market, we are unique. So we are very proud of our unique territory, which is the traditional Chinese recipe with the advanced technology. So this is herborist. So we talk about not only the cream, we don't talk about only the formula, but we tell people how to use it. We talk about the acupuncture point on the face, on your body. We talk about the circulation of the air, of the blood. And we talk about the inner beauty, how to gain the inner beauty from the... So we not only give the offer, we talk about the philosophy, the lifestyle behind. I think some of you received our Taiji mask, which is our star product the day before yesterday. And so when I applied the mask on my face in night, so this is a quite privileged time for myself. This is a dialogue, personal dialogue with myself. I use the black mask to purify my skin, and I use the white mask to nourish my skin. But at the same time, when I think this is only not a protocol of application, but I think about the yin and yang, which is the sun, the day and the night with the woman and the man with the sun and the moon. So which is the relativity exists in all the universe, all the time around us. So this is not only a privileged time to use the cream to purify my skin, but also a dialogue with the inner self. This is very important. So for all the range of products, we have a special protocol. We tell our customers which is the philosophy behind and how to use it, how to apply. So our products is we have 3 pillars. We have the traditional Chinese medicine recipe. We have the advanced technology. We have the application. So these are the 3 pillars of products, which makes herborist very different from the other skincare products.
Okay.
So the culture, if to answer your question.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. All right, I'm gonna go to the next question, which is probably the hardest question of the set. For your Chinese brand, how do you make this brand more culturally relevant in the markets that you're responsible for? So let's go with ICICLE first.
Yes, it was a difficult question. I think it's a challenge. But I think, in fact, of opportunities and challenge, which is the theme of the roundtable, I think I would say that Chineseness is the main challenge and Chineseness is the main opportunity.
Okay.
Yeah, meaning that it's an opportunity to reveal that there's a new Chineseness, a new made in China, a new China. It's a real opportunity because it's new. So it's interesting to reveal that, but we have to find the right brand story. We have to build brand awareness, which is not easy because nobody knows you. So this is a real challenge. Yeah. We have to, in terms of brand story, it's not only I'm Chinese, you know, we will play it. We don't know yet how we will play it, but we have to be subtle, and we feel that we should bring some culture in the brand story, which is that it's not only fashion; it's more than fashion; it's culture. Okay. It's the culture of fashion, which comes from China, but which is completely adapted to today's world. I think this is why when we redid the logo, we had a strategic thinking, which is to say that it's important to have an international logo.
Yes.
Which appeals to everybody. The name is ICICLE, which means stalactite purity, you know, in English.
Yeah.
So it's the purity of a brand, which is purity of the design, purity because of this eco-consciousness. I'll show you a few for the ladies, but there will be men as well. So everybody can come. So you can feel this oriental touch, right? But it's completely modern. So you can feel also the comfort, which is something, the high touch comfort. So I think that one of the answer will be an unfelt idea of comfort on because the comfort is very central in this brand, and because the fabrics are really luxury level, but at a more affordable price. So there is a niche.
Okay. Cool. Just one question. I'm looking at the models, and they all seem pretty Chinese.
Yes.
So would there be a time when you switch that over and use non-Chinese models?
Well, in fact, at the beginning, we think it's good that we show Chinese model,
Okay.
because it's part of the identity of the brand, and it will make the brand interesting. Hey, what's new? This is new.
Yeah.
You know? And this is new Chinese coolness, you know.
Yeah.
So I think it's interesting for the French.
It's very cool.
But later on, of course, we want to mix, in fact, Chinese, French, and people of the world,
Okay.
because the concept of the brand is made in earth. So it means that, of course, it's made in earth, meaning that we are very cautious about the fabrics, which you can see are very naturally sourced with vegetable dyeing, etc. So there is a big speech that we can have on the fabrics, and I think that it's a very strong concern now in the fashion industry about how do you dye your product, how do you source your material, where comes your cotton, how has it been grown, blah blah blah, etc. So we have really answers that a lot of Western brands do not have. So it's a kind of caring fashion, and I think this will be very interesting and new. And later on, I think we will, of course, mix, because it's made in earth is a kind of for all the people of the world, you know.
Okay. Very cool. Thanks. Let's talk about OFO.
Yeah. So at OFO, we are trying to use the same ingredients but a different recipe to build the brand. So it's the same ingredients because it's the same name, the same brand everywhere. Right. It's the same application. Yeah. If you check the logo, it's very easy to remember, very easy to tell, very easy to spell as well. Right. It doesn't mean anything in every languages. It's just the design of a little bike. Right. It's very easy to see in the street as well, because with the yellow color, which is the same everywhere in the world, everywhere in different cities. So same brand, same application as well. The user experience is the same everywhere, because everywhere in the world, people, when they want to move, they want something cheap, green, and easy to use. Right. And the experience is the same everywhere. But then we are using different ingredients. First, the approach, as I mentioned before, is different from Europe to China, especially with city stakeholders. And then what is different is the team. So it's very important to have a mixed teams in the different local markets. So for instance, in France, we are 11 people, 9 on French, sorry, and 2 on Chinese. Okay. So it's also the mix of the team that makes it very local.
Okay. Yeah, if I could just add a little more, because we work with OFO headquarters in Beijing. And one thing that we noticed when we took over the OFO social media globally was that before we took over, there was actually some copywriting that wasn't so, native English, kind of Chinglish type stuff in your social media. So we felt like, as a very simple overhaul, if we could just clean that up, then that takes OFO immediately to the next step as being like an international brand and not some Chinese brand that doesn't care about that kind of stuff.
Exactly, yeah. It's very important to make it simple in every pieces of communications, especially on social media, because you need to be straight to the point.
Okay, cool. TCL?
So TCL means the creative life. So TCL works everywhere in terms of the naming as well. Actually, as I mentioned before, we just need to improve our brand awareness programs. We have global and local for that, and to make TCL relevant to our markets. For example, we just announced a partnership with a new ambassador for our brand, the football player Neymar Jr.
Oh, very cool.
So I know he's injured. I know PSG lost. So I know. So, but you know, we didn't know before.
You should ask for a discount.
He's still a great asset for us. So it's been announced 1 month ago actually, and that's relevant for us because it's football. Football is universal. It's the most viewed program on TV. The Football World Cup is the biggest event on earth for sport, and also in terms of the brand values, his values or what he's driving is also in sync with our values, which is really somebody who is hard worker, who has improved over years to really grow to the top 3 players at only 26 compared to the others who are older, and is also disruptive and creative.
Right.
Really, he's a really disruptive player. So that's what we want to drive, and actually I'm very happy because finally now we have an ambassador for the. It's a worldwide and it's for all the groups, so not only for TV.
Oh, okay.
Now we have somebody we can rely on for messages. You know, he has like 80 million followers on Instagram.
Yeah, I mean, we...
I think 50-ish on Facebook.
Right.
Not talking about the other media. So it's very important for us. Doesn't mean that we're not going also local. We also do a lot of local sponsorship.
Yes.
And for example, I am in charge of Europe, but just to name the US, because the US is so very important, you know, in my market. Actually, you have to fish where the fishes are, right? So the fishes there are in China, in the US, and in Europe,
Right.
mainly. And in the US, I mean, we've been growing fast. Like TCL now in number 3 in the US.
Okay.
It's the fastest growing brand in the US for the last 3 years, and we have always operated via sports sponsorship or TV program sponsorship, like Ellen DeGeneres show, for example.
Or the TCL Chinese Theater.
Exactly, and thank you. I was about to say that, and also. We have the naming of the Chinese theater in Hollywood, which also help us to do a lot of PR around new movie release. So I mean, for us, it's so important to pass the brand, and it took us a lot of time because TCL is a manufacturing expertise company,
Right.
more than a marketing company originally, but now it's really transforming into a fast marketing engine. I'm very pleased about that.
Okay, thanks. Let's hear about Herborist.
How to make the culture relevant to the market? I think I answered partially the question previously, because I talked about culture. And for Herborist in France and in Europe, everything is about culture. Of course, the formula, the product is important, but we have to do that.
Right.
So the real value added, the real point of differentiation is our culture. So I have to say that our job is to think how to interpret the philosophy, the complex culture behind the product in a way that can be understood and accepted by our Western consumers. So this is quite hard. Now, for example, we talk about some traditional Chinese recipe. We talk about the Tai Chi mask, which is composed of the yin and yang. Yin and yang is quite everybody know, if I exaggerate a little bit. But we will launch new products with even more complex mechanism of traditional Chinese medicine afterwards.
Okay.
But how to make this understandable by the French consumers is quite tough, is very challenging. So we will work on that.
Well, would there be a replication of your Chinese strategy, which is to be physically present in some of the most prominent shopping malls, with either your kiosk or your stores, or even stepping that up a little? In China, you have like top-tier celebrity endorsement. Would you ever consider that for the international markets?
For the communication?
Yeah.
With the celebrity? Not yet.
Okay.
Because we are not talking about the same size of market in China. China is so big.
Right.
We have, if I add the cosmetic stores, we have more than 3,000 point of sales in China. So in France, it's much less. So we are not talking about the same population base. So we will not use the same communication way. But we will use a communication which is more targeted to our end user. We know our consumers. They are loyal. So we know what they need. So we try to explain.
Okay, great.
In a way that they understand.
Thanks. So the numbers are now flashing. I'm not sure if we have time for questions.
Just here? Oh, they're all there. Here's one. Sorry. Lady in red.
I have a question for Isabelle Capron. In fact, do you know the brand SHANGHAI and what you think about it? Because I guess most of the people in this room doesn't really know the origin of SHANGHAI, but in fact it's like Hermès. And actually I know JAHWA very well since 2005. And when she started in 2009 and 10, it was exactly what you guys are doing in 1997, is really looking for the right craftspeople, Chinese craftsmen, and all the materials, and very eco-centric, and even also for the wooden, because they are doing also furniture and everything. So, and in fact, it's a French brand. So,
yeah. So, what's your question?
So, what do you think? What do you think about SHANGHAI? Because they started later than you, and then and their product is very expensive.
Thank you for the question. I think it's very different. What is interesting is that I think it's a very smart idea from Hermès to do this within the Hermès group, because it shows that Hermès respects the culture of China. And I think that in terms of image and communication, knowing that behind SHANGHAI you have Hermès, it's very good for the Chinese market. This is my first comment. In terms of product and brand, the brand is very interesting. It's a luxury brand, you know. It's a very high level pricing, super high. The offer is quite narrow. It's about some ceramics, some special products from China. I mean, the intellectual thinking is close, you're right. But ICICLE is definitely commercial and super contemporary. So this is the big difference. You know, they have 300 stores all over China, and which is not the approach of SHANGHAI, which is much more of a niche market and very high luxury.
Anybody else? We have one up in the back.
Hi, yeah, I have a Benjamin Job from Hacks. We invested in hardware. I have a question for the Matthieu from OFO, because I was a user of OFO in China. Now I'm a user of OFO in Paris. And what I noticed is that when you're not familiar with the brand, it's very hard to differentiate OFO from your competitors, Mobike, Obike, Gobi. And actually, recently, Gobi had to pull out of some countries in Europe. So my question is about, do you find differences in behaviors of users in the way they either use the bike or treat the bike? And how do you highlight and differentiate your brand in this market, in France in particular?
Okay, so first, thank you for using OFO in Paris. Regarding the differentiation, if your question is about vandalism, for instance, we don't see many differences in terms of vandalism between the European markets. So, for instance, the vandalism rate in Paris is quite similar to the one in Vienna, the one in Madrid, the one in London, the one in Milano. So for me, there's no big difference on that. then we don't have a lot of history in Paris, so it's difficult then to analyze a bit more deeply the data. But what we want to differentiate is a few things. First is the product, and it's not the same product if you compare OFO to Gobi. I think both are quite extreme in terms of the quality, in terms of solidity, not only about the product, but also about the technology and the app behind, which is very important. I think the second difference is in the service and what you offer as a service in terms of operational, in terms of reparation, in terms of pickup, etc. And for that, it's very challenging. You need a lot of people and you need a lot of cash. And the situation between all the actors are not the same. And the third point is the approach with city stakeholders, for instance, which is not the same with all the competitors. Some prefer to launch first and then they discuss. On our side, we discuss first and then we launch, which is a bit different.
Maybe just quick follow-on. Like, do you see important differences between the behaviors of European customers versus Chinese?
Not really for the moment. Maybe what we see in it's very short because we launched 3 months ago, so it's a bit short in terms of learnings, and the size is not the same, of course. So what we see is that it's in France, in Paris in particular, it's not only the first mile and the last mile. It could be the full coverage of the trip, not only the beginning or the end, which is the case really in China, but in Paris it could be the full trip and not only the beginning or the end. So this is a trend we need to analyze a bit more in the coming months.